right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Hazelwood MRF. Republic Services, one of the larger MRFs in the country. MRF processes over 500 tons a day of recycled materials. What you're looking at right now is our tip floor. This is where the material is delivered. This pile over here is our commercial pile. See that nice big plastic bag in the middle of it? That side over there, which is we're processing right now, is our residential pile. That residential pile has a lot more cardboard in it than it used to with all the home deliveries now. Very rich in cardboard. But our volumes have maintained. We're getting less from commercial, but more from residential. What happens is when the material comes in, it feeds into this large cavern over here onto a conveyor belt that goes through a drum feeder. That drum feeder feeds our conveyor belt with about a foot burden depth all day long. That allows us to sort at maximum efficiency and never stop. Material goes up conveyor belts and into a pre-sort room. Inside that pre-sort room is where we pull out things that we don't want. Things like that big plastic bag I showed, large little type toys, large heavy metals, trash, pallets, everything we want to get off our line before it hits the sorting system, because it could damage the sorting system, with plastic bags basically being our worst offender. Once it goes through that room, it hits a series of spinning discs and screens that bounce the cardboard over the top and allows things like paper and containers, aluminum, plastic bottles, steel, glass to fall through. At that point, we hit some spinning discs that shatter the glass, and we remove and recycle the glass. The paper and the containers continue through the building. So we're going to start heading through the building. The first place we're going to stop is my optical sorter that we just installed. It was a $2 million investment. It is an optical sorter that helps me clean up my fiber. So the optical will read the makeup of plastics and blow them in one direction, and cardboard and blow them in another direction. We'll head that way so you can see that happening. Inside here, there's two sets of cameras, one up, one down. They're taking pictures, and as it flows over the top there, if it's cardboard, it hits it with the jet and shoots it over the top. If it's plastic or trash, it hits it with the jet and shoots it down. The end result is pretty cool. We get one conveyor belt of cardboard. We get one conveyor belt of plastic bags and stuff we didn't ask for. And then in the middle, we get the paper, what we're after. So this optical sorter allows us, that would all be in one pile together. This optical sorter allows us to separate cardboard from paper and from plastic and trash.
Yep, and it's not a perfect system, but it's a lot better than it was before, isn't it, Brent?
Yeah, it's cleaned it up by about 90%. And what it's allowing to happen, Bob, is it's allowing us to get a much better cut of what we want and much easier to sort. What happens after that, this is the cardboard that came off that line. That's the trash and plastic that's going to be further sorted. The paper is hitting this line right here. And this is where humans kick in, and they're looking for that last piece of cardboard, that piece of plastic. They can send it back where it belongs. And basically the end product coming off the line, our paper has improved in quality. Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. We're selling it for a better price. It's a much better product. It's just really clean paper. Where before all that plastic and cardboard would still be in there, and my human workers would be trying to pull that. As you can see, we're properly spaced out. We provided everybody in here with PPE.
Yeah, that looks
every day.
That looks really great, Brent, to see, you know, how fast are those conveyor belts going? Have you had to slow them down or speed them up?
They run at about 120 feet per minute. If you look straight down, you'd get pretty dizzy. That's one of our issues. So in the back are the paper screens. You can kind of see the material churning back there. It's a set of rubber disc screens. As they spin, they pull anything flat like paper goes over the top and heads over to the optical sorter back there in the corner. You can see the light that I showed you earlier. anything with three-dimensional, like containers, comes to this line. So at this point, we've separated about 90% of the fiber from the containers, and we're doing the final pick over here. The cardboard that came off outside is coming down this chute and going down into a bunker to be baled. The next thing we have to do is sort all the containers. Remember our pick 6, right? We want fiber. Anything that tears, basically, magazines, junk mail, newspaper. We want cardboard. And then we want containers. Glass, food and beverage containers, aluminum, steel, food and beverage containers, and basically anything with the neck, 3 through 7, no 6s. So detergent bottles, milk jugs, water bottles, any household products, nothing hazardous. Those 6 items. Anything else? In doubt, unfortunately, throw it out.
And Brent, can you talk a little bit about what happens when wet material comes in? Like, how does wet material like stick to other objects and such?
When wet material starts hitting these screens in the back, it becomes much harder to tear it apart, to separate it. We're separating with gravity and shape. But as that material gets wet and hits these screens and starts shredding up, we have to slow the machines down, we have to sort a lot slower, and we do get more contamination. That optical sorter has really helped, but yeah, wet material causes us some headaches. All right, so now that we've got most of the paper out, we have to sort our containers. This big spinning belt right here is a magnetic belt. As the material passes underneath it, it's literally sucking the steel cans off and dumping them on the conveyor. It's pulling the steel off and putting them on a container, on a belt.
That's a big magnet that's spinning around right there. Is that right, Brent?
Yes, it's a magnetic belt. It magnifies at one end and demagnifies at the other tail pulley, and that's when the cans fall off.
That's just brilliant technology.
The next thing we have is an eddy current. Eddy current is magnets that spin so fast, they repel aluminum. It's an electromagnet inside that box. It pulls the aluminum off. It drops it on this conveyor belt where Jose is looking for that one last, piece of shrapnel that came with it. And the aluminum cans are falling down in that chute, coming up through this fan and blowing down into the bunker. Very effective way to sort aluminum. Now we have our plastic bottles left, and they go through a set of 3 opticals very similar to the one I showed you for the paper. These optical sorters are looking for the chemical makeup of the bottle. In a very short space, the camera takes a picture, gets the chemical makeup of the bottle, and an air jet will blow it off the line. Here are the number 1s, the water bottles and soda bottles that optical sorter has identified and blown off the line. Kathy is looking for that one piece of something that maybe the air jet missed, and she can send it back where it belongs. Kind of loud here, I apologize.
It sounded really pretty good so far. We did get a question on the chat about the latest on the market for different recycled products. And I posted in the chat, a Resource Recycling magazine offers some insight into that commodity market. Do you have anything to say about that, Brent?
Yeah, as I show you the finished grades, we'll talk about that. Some of them are really worth a lot of money right now, but if they have anything to do with packaging, if they don't have anything to do with packaging, they're almost worthless. So it's kind of a trade-off. What you're seeing here is my HDPE, my number 2 bottle sorter. So as number 2 bottles pass underneath that white light, the computer identifies it, hits it with an air jet, and blows it over. So here's the milk jug. I'm going to drop it. Whoop, and there it goes.
That's fast.
Pretty cool technology. This is what I like. This is where I start my day. Make sure everything's working right. The last optical sorter down here, it will do what's remaining, the 3 through 7s less number 6. It's a dual head also, so any paper that has made it through can also be sorted onto that line down there and go back into my paper bin with that fiber. So any paper that's made it that far, because we're sorting with air, we can recover it at the end. There's the milk jugs that came off that Optical. You can see it does a pretty darn good job.
Sure does. And everything's spaced out really well so that your human hands have time to see and sort things a little bit further afterwards, isn't it?
Yeah, basically the human hands in here are all quality control people. The machine's doing all the separation. The human hands are, you know, getting the 5% that didn't go in the right direction. Everything underneath these people is a bunker. All these products are going into storage bunkers. And as the bunkers load, we are monitoring it. Right now, they're dumping the cardboard bunker. That material's heading over to the baler to be baled and sold as a commodity.
Hey, Brent, did I see some like VHS tape or something hanging off of one of your lines?
Yeah, you did.
People throw all kinds of stuff into the recycling containers, don't they?
We got VHS, some tickets, plastic bags. Every day we clean this place. I know people don't believe that, but it's true. Like, yeah, if we could just get people to get us the items we want, the pick 6 items, you know, no more bags, no more little tykes, no more deer heads during deer season. It's true, it happens. You know, this plant would run much more efficiently and be able to give a better return to our customers, no doubt about it. We're still running at about 19% contamination. When this plant opened, it was about 9. So obviously we are high as 22, so it is getting better, but we got a ways to go.
And what does that actually mean, the 19% contaminant?
19% of what we handle in this plant doesn't make it, you know, it's making a very long trip to the landfill.
And it's stuff that would go to the landfill anyway, correct?
Yes, that is correct. You know, some of it got contaminated by the raw material. You know, a plastic bag may pick up 3 or 4 cans with it, and as that plastic bag goes through the system and ends up in the trash, it may have been full of good recyclables. So some of that is cross-contamination.
And that sounds like
a little bit of the plant.
Yeah, that sounds like a user error that we've been working hard to correct. Is trying to make sure that everything that goes into a recycling container is loose, clean, and dry.
Empty, clean, and dry. That's our mantra. Empty, clean, and dry. So we put some finished product down here. You know, there's my #1 PET milk or soda bottles. We've got 3 through 7s. There's the HDPE milk jugs, aluminum cans, cardboard, fiber, right? So right now, items such as cardboard, fiber, all have a really high value because most of it's going into packaging. PET bottles are kind of down right now. The HD market is down. That's pretty much has to do with fuel being so low and the fact that plastics are made from a derivative of refining. We are seeing that price has really dropped off on the plastic side. Right now, manufacturers in any type of packaging, I frankly can't get enough, and seeing the price go way up on those commodities, and hope that dries up.
Little buffering there, Brent.
A lot of
recording. You might have to restart what you're saying.
Are we okay now?
That sounds better.
Okay, sorry. You know, paper mills right now can't keep up with the demand for boxes. Tissue makers cannot keep up for the demand for tissue products, toilet paper, paper towels. You know, we are the raw supply to those end users. So, you know, cardboard companies are begging for our cardboard. the companies like Kimberly-Clark, Pacific are begging for our paper products to make tissue. Some plastic places that make flake to make household product bottles can't get enough of it. So yeah, there is a demand on a lot of our products, but because oil is so low, because a barrel of oil is so cheap right now, byproduct of plastic is from refining. So virgin plastics are very cheap, and that has driven down the value of recycled plastics. Paper's higher than I've seen it in 2.5 years, but plastic's lower than I've seen it in 5 years. So it's kind of a give and take.
Brent, that's really great insight, because I don't think people really fully understand how recycling works, and that it's a commodity just like gold and frozen concentrated orange juice, that the prices fluctuate based on different market demand.
Yeah, we're one big pig belly, right? It's definitely 100% supply and demand. Cardboard and paper, it hasn't stopped. It's going to keep going up in value. You know, who knows how long it'll last, because the economy was pretty strong prior to this. This supply and demand is 100% due to the COVID virus. So we're enjoying it while it's lasting, you know, but at the same time, it's driven fuel down so low that it's offset, you know, the prices because of the plastics being so low. So it's a wild ride.
Yeah. We did get one question in the chat about, are there any volunteer or maybe even employment opportunities?
You know, we are fully staffed. We were pretty much running at about 90% capacity prior to this. We continue to run at that capacity. We always have a certain contingent of temporary labor, and those temporary agencies are full, and they are keeping me staffed with people. So, you know, for us, we're full, but we certainly aren't short. And in the past, prior to this, we were always short on labor. We couldn't get enough of it. I think with so many people laid off and without work right now, we're pretty fortunate to be able to find it.
And then you kind of touched on this a little bit, but other countries buy most of your material, or you do a lot of stuff in the Midwest to keep material domestic?
Oh boy, 98% of what we're selling right now is all domestic. We ship a little bit of paper into Mexico via rail to the Kimberly-Clark plant in Mexico to make tissue. We did send some cardboard overseas a month ago, but that was more of a mill asking us to help them with one of their overseas mills. But pretty much everything we're doing right now is domestic.
That's great. And do you know anything about what's happening on the coast? Would they be more of an international market than a domestic market on the eastern west coast?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know, and I think there's some issues with overseas containers because they're not coming over the way they were. But definitely the overseas market is hungry also. This is definitely a worldwide issue.
That's great. And then someone asked, like, what do you do with containers with food on them? Like, so people are probably wondering, like, when I put something in your recycling bin, but it's got food waste, maybe it's wet, what ends up happening with that?
You know, great question. First off, it could cause me to get a rejection. I mean, I'm selling everything by weight. So when I sell a PET bottle, they want to buy a PET bottle and not a half a jar full of peanut butter. So we want it as empty, clean, and dry as possible. But every plastic grinder, this material goes through a water bath. It is cleaned and sanitized to remove those items. It's also a float sink process where they can float some plastics away from others, but they are clean. They are washed.
That's great. Then somebody else is saying, hey, since paper demand is so high, I mean, should I be sending you my paper napkins and paper towels?
Good question. No, you know, we still have our sanitary needs that we have to stay with. We can, you know, we don't want to add things, you know, to try to, that could cause us harm or sickness or illness here by any means, right? And 9 times out of 10, those items are wet anyway. So we want to stick with your household papers, newspaper, junk mail, magazines, and so forth, and your cardboard boxes. Still no tissue products, no paper plates, items like that.
Yeah, the paper plates and the paper cups especially probably is a big one because of that plastic lining that's on a lot of paper cups, right?
Yeah, they could either have a plastic lining or they could have, a chemical barrier to keep them from, dropping the liquid on your lap. They're designed to do what they're supposed to do, but that affects, where we can sell them on our end.
Yeah, because I think what I always talk about, and I do some recycling education through our Recycling on the Go event recycling program for Earth Day 365, is that people say, oh, plastics, all plastics, right, are good, but it really it's certain kinds of plastics, like bottles and containers, but not plastic strapping, plastic garden hoses, plastic toys.
Right. We're selling to specific markets, a specific grade of plastic and the way it was made, right? And when they grind that up to remelt it into a product, it's got to be pure and it's got to be, a consistent flow of what they're getting. So we know that a number 2 HDP bottle is going to be very consistent. We know a number 1 water bottle is going to be very consistent, or soda bottle. When you start getting multi-polymers and different ways things are molded, they react differently when you're recycled. So, somebody puts that little tight slide in thinking they're doing me a favor. They're really not. I don't have a home for it. In this system, there are homes for it. And there's great websites out here in St. Louis that can drive you where you could drop things like that off. Maybe not in today's environment, but, we just want to stick after the major household and office items, which are your food and beverage containers and household item containers.
Yeah, and I'm sure people get confused too when they see paper, and it's like, well, not all paper, because sometimes paper is sandwiched onto some bubble wrap mailing, like an Amazon packet, right?
Yeah, we're getting a lot of those in right now. That envelope that you get instead of the box that has a smiley face on it with it's plastic on one side, bubble wrap on the other, maybe paper on one. FedEx Tyvek envelopes. I mean, those are made to be waterproof so the product inside doesn't get destroyed. Like I said, they're made to do what they do, but unfortunately they're non-recyclable in our single stream system.
Yeah, I mean, single stream does really well with the 6 types of objects that you've wanted since we started this whole thing, what, in 2006 or 2008?
Right, 2008 mainly is when it really kicked off here, right? So other than adding cartons, gable neck cartons with the screw-on lids, the product list hasn't changed. We may got a little lax, and maybe the whole industry said, hey, let's try that. But the reality of it is, at the end of the day, the product list hasn't changed other than adding cartons to it. And we just need to get back to that. Help this plant run more efficiently, much more safely, which is, the most important thing for our company. So.
Are you having any issue with like rain in the dumpsters? And the St. Louis City has that dumpster program, and if I got paper, I want to give it to you, but I want to keep it as dry as possible. Any tips on that or ideas?
The city's gone to great lengths to try to remove some plugs and do different things to eliminate the amount of water in those dumpsters, and I give them credit for that. As long as you, the consumer, do your best to keep everything as clean and dry when it's in your house, let us handle it from here. We'll take it from there. We do get, during heavy rainstorms, a little bit more wet material. Our commercial dumpsters aren't waterproof either, so we deal with it. We slow our machine down and we separate it, and it's successful. We don't need any added,
That's great, Brent, because I'm sure people are taking a paper bag from the store and filling it with all their junk mail and other stuff and sending that to you.
Yeah.
And that, if paper is getting blown off the conveyor belt, is that going to be a problem, or?
No, we don't. I don't mind. Shredded paper inside a paper bag is probably going to go where it belongs. Shredded paper inside a plastic bag is probably making a long trip to the landfill, right? So we prefer everything as loose as possible. If it's shredded paper, put it in a brown bag and just fold the top, and we can handle it. But yeah, empty, clean, dry, and as loose as possible.
Well, Brent, thank you so much for a fantastic tour. Getting a lot of good feedback on the chat. People are loving this and can't wait for you to reopen so that you can have public tours again. You want to talk a little bit about that?
As you can tell, I can't wait for my barber shop to reopen too. Yeah, I mean, you know, we're a couple months away from that pretty easily, right? But one of the best educational things I can do is give a tour to show people, look, we take this big pile of ugly material, and at the end of the day, we make 6 to 7, 8 commodities out of it that we sell to the world to make your products at home. And it's just a great way to educate people, and you can also see what causes us the most grief. You know, it's a great tool. So probably a couple months away from that, hopefully sooner, but I don't want to get, you know, too excited about that.
Right. Well, thanks so much there, Brent. And thank you, you know, everybody else who tuned in for this tour of the Republic Services Material Recovery Facility in Hazelwood, Missouri here on this April 20th, 2020. And you all take care and do your part to keep recycling clean by talking to your neighbor and
Bob,
letting them know.
Thank you so much for doing this. St. Louis Earth Day. Nothing could be more important. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
All right. Thanks. All right. We're going to end it there.
See ya.